Welcome to part 2 of our macroinvertebrate video. We have gone over what an aquatic macroinvertebrate is, learned how to use a dichotomous key to identify them, and discussed life cycles. If you missed it, there is a link in the description down below to watch part 1. We saw a leech and a larval dragonfly last time. This is an adult dragonfly that has gone through metamorphosis. Now, let's get right back into what kinds of bugs we found in Butler Creek. This is a freshwater shrimp, and they are very quick movers. You see all those little legs underneath him? Some crawfish. They're in the crustacean group. And right next to our crawfish is a freshwater clam. And this is actually an invasive species. This is called Corbicula, and it is a type of Asian clam. A lot of times our students are very confused about how these mollusks work. There is a living thing inside of those hard shells. What they'll do is once they feel safe and comfortable, they will stick out part of their gooey body. And actually, if you see those, the two things coming out on that side, right there, that is part of its body. That white stuff is his body too. So basically he's a big gooey white thing in there, and you can see him moving around. Here is a closer look at a clam moving around. This little thing is called a damselfly, and they are actually very closely related to dragonflies. It's going to go through an incomplete metamorphosis as well. So this is a nymph, and it will become an adult and look very similar to a dragonfly. They tend to stay a bit smaller, and when they're at rest, their wings are closed behind them, whereas dragonflies, their wings are open to their sides. So we're going to look at this guy a little bit closer. They are going to have those three tails at the back, and they tend to be flattened on one side, kind of like a paddle. That is going to be important because in just a second I'm going to show you a mayfly, and they also have three tails, but they're going to look different. So this is an adult damselfly. This is what the nymph will turn into, and you can see that it's resting with its wings behind its back instead of out by its side like dragonflies do. These are mayflies, and we actually found two different kinds of mayflies. Now you can see they have those three tails in the back, kind of like the damselflies, except for these tails are very thin. So let's look at the other kind of mayfly that we found. It also has things coming out of its sides, and it has three hair-like tails. So he's got a flat nose, and you can see something moving. So we're gonna move him so we can see what's going on back there. Those are his gills. He has external gills, and when he's moving them, he's letting the water pass through them so that he can get the oxygen out of the water. And then if we look at his tails, you can see that they are very skinny, and they are not flattened on one side. So they're not like a paddle. All right, here is the second kind of mayfly we were looking at. And this one is actually developing wings. Those are the black things on its back. These are also nymphs. So these are baby mayflies. And what's really cool is you can actually see its gills, and you can see the outline of them. It looks pretty cool. This is an adult mayfly that has gone through its incomplete metamorphosis. And something interesting about adult mayflies is they actually do not have a mouth. They only live for about a day. This tiny little thing is called a midge, and this is also the larval stage. It will become a flying insect like most of the other things we've looked at. So this is an up-close shot of our midge. And you can see his little head, and then he's got some funny things sticking out at the end of his body. And you can see straight through him and see his insides. This is a type of diving beetle, and we're going to look at it up close, and you'll notice that it kind of looks like a ladybug. So this diving beetle actually has wings hidden underneath that top layer, just like ladybugs do. And that's important for when you're keying him out, because you have to say that it does have wings to end up with the right answer. Here we have a scud, which is a type of tiny shrimp. And you'll notice that it looks very shrimp-like when we look at it underneath the scope. But notice that it has a whole bunch of little legs under there. Here we have some caddisflies, and these things might look like sticks, but you'll notice that they are moving on their own. What caddisflies do is they are born and then they immediately start finding different pieces of materials in their habitat to build basically the perfect camouflage. And it depends on what kind of caddisfly it is to decide what kind of substrate or material they use. So this kind of caddisfly makes itself look like a stick. And so their body can go in and out of the thing that they've built around themselves to make them be part of the stick. So what you can see right now is actually its head poking out of its case, and then it does have 6 legs. It's an insect that it's using to move around. Now that we have identified all of our aquatic macroinvertebrates that we found in Butler Creek, we are going to move on to the last step, which is to figure out what it all means. So basically, macroinvertebrates are bioindicators. And what that means is that they're living things that can give us some information about their habitat. So the reason we use aquatic macroinvertebrates is because they are reliable, they're easy to find, and it is fairly cheap to be able to find them. All you need are some waders and a key and somebody who has an idea of what they're doing. So the reason that we caught them is because we can actually use a system to figure out how healthy the creek is now. The main thing that we are looking for is biodiversity. And what that means is, bio means life, and diversity means a mixture of different kinds of things. So biodiversity means a measure of how many different kinds of living things you have in an area. So in this case, we are measuring the biodiversity of aquatic macroinvertebrates in Butler Creek. So just based on all of the bugs that I just showed you, I know that our biodiversity is high, which is a good thing. If our biodiversity were low, that would mean that our habitat did not have enough resources to support a bunch of different kinds of life. So whenever you go into a new habitat, say you're walking in the woods, right now I can hear a bunch of birds singing, there are squirrels running around. If you go out into the woods and it's silent, that's a little bit eerie, and that's because that would be a sign that your habitat is not healthy, because your diversity would be low. So we want to find a whole bunch of different kinds of living things in our habitats, and that's going to tell us just right off the bat that it's probably okay. But we want to get into even more detail. So what we have is a sheet, and all the things that we've been doing today are based off of Adopt-A-Stream, which is a citizen science group, and what they do is they get citizens like yourself to help collect data on streams, and we kind of modified their stuff for our field trips. So we have a biodiversity index, and what we are doing is it is showing us that there are 4 different categories of bugs, and it's all based on the type of health their habitat needs to be in order for them to survive. So if you notice, the first column is for sensitive organisms. That means that these bugs are the ones that need their habitat to be extremely healthy in order for them to live there. So if we had a habitat that was not healthy, you would not find those things. And then we have somewhat sensitive, pollution tolerant, and those are the things that can live in polluted habitats, and we have non-indicators. These are the things that are so hardy that they can live just about in any habitat. So they don't give us a lot of information. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna get a certain number of points from each column. So you can see I already checked off the bugs that we found. So if you look underneath the columns, there's a math equation. So we're gonna do that together really quickly. Our sensitive organisms, we are gonna write down how many we checked off, which is 2, and then it says times 3. So each sensitive organism gets 3 points. So we're gonna get 6. Our somewhat sensitive organisms, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they are worth 2 points each, which gives us 10. And our pollution tolerance are worth 1, and we have 2 of those, so we got 2. And then our non-indicators, we had 2, but look, it's times 0, which is always 0, right? So non-indicators don't give us any points. Then it says add together the total of each. So 6 plus 10 is 16, plus 2 is 18, plus 0 is 18. So our total index value is 18, and now we need to find what our water quality rating would be based on that number, and we got good. So what we just did is we were able to figure out that Butler Creek is in good quality as a habitat just based on the water bugs that live in it. And I will say that normally we do get excellent, but this is the first time that we have done any collecting since we've had a whole bunch of rain, and we think some of our species may have been washed away and might still be reestablishing in their habitat. But good is still good, and it's significant because Butler Creek has a sad history. So we are in Augusta, Georgia, and we're at Phinizy Swamp. There is something called Phinizy Ditch that the city of Augusta dug, and what it was is a ditch that fed into Butler Creek, and it's where the whole city of Augusta would come to dump their raw sewage. This was before the Clean Water Act was passed in 1972, and before laws were in place that said that you have to send your wastewater to a wastewater treatment plant to get cleaned up. You can't just dump it straight into your rivers. So people didn't know any better, and they used to take all of their waste and just dump it out into our environment. And so I can definitely tell you that back then, we would not be getting good or excellent ratings for this creek. We would be getting very poor ratings. So over time, the creek has been able to bounce back because we as humans have been making better decisions, and the system has been able to get back to a healthy level, and we're very happy about that. So hopefully, when you guys get to come out to Phinizy Swamp and you can walk along Butler Creek, you can notice how healthy it seems, and maybe you can find some of these cool aquatic macroinvertebrates yourself.